Hey guys, Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer. We talk about music and occasionally books and movies. And today we're going to be continuing my Zodiac sign series. This time we're talking about Cancer. The Zodiac sign, not the disease. Before we get started, let's get some rules out of the way. 1. These albums are in no particular order. 2. These are albums that I feel fit Cancer's personality traits, not albums that I think every single Cancer will like. In other words, don't take it too seriously. Link to my previous album discussing 10 albums that Geminis should listen to will be linked in the description. And with that, let's get started with an album that fits Cancer's symbol, which is a crab. The crab makes me think of someone with who's tough on the outside and soft on the inside, like a crab inside of its shell. And an album that makes me think of that is Rites of Spring by Rites of Spring.
And there was no one there to know. What could I do? What could I do?
Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary people, I would like to introduce to you the original emo band. Yes, decades before My Chemical Romance and Panic at the Disco came along, emo was invented by a band called Rites of Spring. Back in the 1980s when this happened, emo was nothing more than a punk subgenre that just happened to have more emotional and personal lyrics than most punk at the time. So, what does this have to do with Cancer? Well, as you probably heard when I played a clip from this album sounds very aggressive. It's a hardcore punk album, which is a genre that's known for being aggressive and having a bit of a tough guy image. Meanwhile, if you read the lyrics, they're actually really sensitive. The sound is the shell, and the lyrics are the skin that's underneath. It also works because water signs, such as Cancer, tend to be pretty sensitive, and emo music is the sensitive genre. In other words, it's practically the genre of Cancers. Speaking of water signs, by the way, the next album is about Cancer's element, which is, of course, water. When I think of water, I think of calming and atmospheric. An album that makes me think of that is Autumn of Communion by Autumn of Communion. One of the first genres that comes to mind when I think of water is ambient music, and this is one of the most beautiful ambient projects I've ever listened to. It reminds me of a crisp autumn day. It's the ultimate relaxing album, and I imagine that Cancers would enjoy listening to it to calm their emotions. Not much to say about this one since it's an ambient project and it has no vocals or anything. So let's move on to an album that fits Cancer's quality, which is Cardinal. Cardinal means action-oriented, so let's go with a fast-paced album that also has a water theme. Immersion by Pendulum. Now this is an action-packed album. Every song has a ton of energy and it never lets off the gas. Fun fact, I actually played this album in the car with my parents, and even my dad, the classic rock guy, said that it was a great driving album. If that doesn't scream action-packed, I don't know what does. This album also has a ton of instrumental songs, meaning that Cancers can use their water sign intuition to figure out the meanings for themselves. Not to mention the water theme that runs throughout this album. Seriously, this album cover just screams Cancer. Unfortunately, I don't have much to say about this album either, So let's move on to the albums that fit Cancer's personality traits. The first of those is Loyal, and an album that fits Loyal is Damn by Kendrick Lamar.
Got war and peace inside my DNA. I got power, poison, pain, and joy inside my DNA. I got hustle, though, ambition, flow inside my DNA.
Now I know what some of you are probably thinking. You just picked this album because it has a song called Loyalty on it, didn't you? Well, partially. It is true that Loyalty is the first song I thought of when I was trying to fill this spot. But there are other songs on this album that fit too. Love is about loyalty in a romantic relationship. DNA is about how Kendrick is African American and how all of the stuff that comes with it is a part of him. And Lust is about loyalty to your own routine. Loyalty is the most obvious Cancer song, but there are other songs that fit too. It's subtle, but it fits. If you want something a bit more obviously Cancer, you can find that with our next trait, Protective. The album I've chosen for that is Vessel by 21 Pilots.
With what I once bought, cause somebody stole my car radio and now I just sit in silence. Sometimes quiet is violent.
Yes, another 21 Pilots album makes one of my lists. What are the odds? Anyway, I feel this album fits Cancer because it's all about helping people who are depressed. In other words, it's an album about protecting people from themselves. The song I feel fits this concept most is the closing track, Truce. This song is absolutely gorgeous, and it contains the beautiful line, stay alive for me. You will die, but now your life is free. Take pride in what is sure to die. The phrase, stay alive, has become something of a catchphrase among 21 Pilots fans, reminding each other that life is worth living. In other words, not only is this album about protecting people, it's also inspired other people to protect each other. That's about as Cancer as you can get. Also, I feel like this album fits Cancer because it's so emotional. Water signs in general are pretty emotional, and Cancers in particular are known for having rapidly shifting emotions. That's because they're ruled by the moon, which causes their emotions to go in and out like the tide. Therefore, I think a lot of Cancers will relate to the lines about waking up feeling happy and then at the end of the day feeling upset and sad. Anyway, on to the next trait. That trait is intuitive. When I think of intuition in music, I think of instrumentals, because instrumentals enable the listener to use their intuition to come up with their own meanings for the songs. A good instrumental album is Spirit Dance by Ethero. This is my first time putting a classical album on one of my lists. It's a great album too, being calm, atmospheric, and just downright beautiful. Another great album to calm one's emotions to. Also, if you look at the titles of some of these songs, they just scream intuition. Spring Snow, Glass Forest, Ghost Flower? Try using your intuition to figure out what those titles are trying to convey. Again, not much to say about this one since it's instrumental and whatnot, but it is a great album. Now for the next Cancer trait, which is caring. An album that fits that is We Stitch These Wounds by Black Veil Brides. Ah yes, another album about helping the listener. This time, it's about helping anyone who feels like an outcast, which is incredibly caring. Also, it fits Cancer's more emotional side. This is another moody album full of songs about self-harm and revenge that were quite relatable to me when I was an angsty teenager. So yeah, thank you, Black Veil Brides. Now that we've gotten the positives out of the way, let's move on to the negative Cancer traits. In other words, if you can't take criticism, click off this video. If you can, stick around because the first negative Cancer trait is overly sensitive. An album that's overly sensitive is Still Not Getting Any by Simple Plan. I'm going to start this entry by doing something controversial. I'm gonna stand up for Simple Plan. Yeah, I know, these guys are whiny, but I'd argue that's the point. Like with Black Veil Brides or 21 Pilots, the point of their music is to help people, especially teenagers. I know this because, according to their Wikipedia page, Simple Plan actually have a charity called the Simple Plan Foundation, designed to help teenagers who are going through tough times. Not only do these guys talk the talk when it comes to helping teenagers, they also walk the walk. Very Cancer of them, by the way. With that out of the way, the attitudes reflected in these songs are definitely hypersensitive, which is definitely a Cancer trait. Songs like Welcome to My Life and How Could This Happen to Me reflect how Cancers are at their worst, and I love them for it. I get why people hate Simple Plan, but I personally love them. Anyway, on to the next trait, which is moody. An album that fits this one is Brave Faces, Everyone by Spanish Love Songs.
It won't be this bleak forever, and I hope you're right. It won't be this bleak forever. Have you seen me lately? It won't be this bleak forever. Yeah, right.
This is one of the most critically acclaimed albums I've ever seen on YouTube. It deserves it too. It's basically millennial angst in album form, and that's not a bad thing. I can picture a lot of Cancers relating to this when they're sad, especially with lines like, "It won't be this bleak forever, yeah right." Lines like this sum up how millennials and even Gen Z are feeling right now. The older generations tell us that everything will be okay eventually, but here's the thing. Bleakness is all us young people have ever known, so it's hard for us to believe that. There's also some subtle social commentary on this album that will make you cry. Believe me, if you decide to check out this album, prepare to be sad. Still, check it out. It'll impact your life, I think. Now on to the final trait of this video, which is Vengeful. The first album that came to mind when I thought of Vengeful was The Unforgiving by Within Temptation. For those of you who don't know, this is a concept album. It tells the story of a woman named Mother Maiden who has the ability to bring back lost souls. She uses this ability to bring back some lost souls to help her take a stand against evil, and in exchange for helping her, the lost souls get to make up for what they did when they were alive. If a Cancer had this kind of power, I imagine they'd use it. It also reminds me of Cancer because this is one of those albums I loved when I was an angsty teenager because I felt like it related to me. In other words, if any of you Cancers have ever felt guilt, this is the album for you. It's also one of my favorite albums of all time, so make of that what you will. And that's my list. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I'm Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer, and I'm out.